Hello, hello, hello. Father Aaron here with day 16 of the Advent Gospel Challenge, in which we are reading the entirety of the Gospel according to St. Luke in the season of Advent, because this year Advent happens to be 24 days long and Luke happens to be 24 chapters long. So, good match. I'm back today with the C.S. Lewis Bible, lovely edition. Let's dive right in. We have had a series of teachings, some of them controversial, some of them pushing the boundaries of what was accepted. Here, the parable of the prodigal son, who has just wasted his father's property, and so but is accepted back. The 100 sheep with one goes missing. Who would not leave the 99? Well, no decent shepherd would do that, right? And so Jesus is expanding the idea of what God's grace means. It's above and beyond. It's overflowing. Okay. Then he tells the parable of the dishonest manager. The dishonest manager. Now, this is the one in which the manager is squandering the master's money. We're not told how. And he's going to be fired. And says, well, what do I do? I'll make friends so that when I'm cast out of the master's house, I can find places to go. And so what he does is he goes to the various people who owe the master money, and he slashes their bills, right? Sometimes in half. He's just like, no, don't, you don't owe that much anymore. Make it half of that. Make it 80, make whatever. He's cutting all their bills down, which, I mean, if you got a message from your credit card company, from the bank that has your mortgage, and say, you know what, cut your debt in half. You don't owe this much, cut it in half. You'd be pretty happy too, wouldn't you? Right? So that's what happens. And rather than being even angrier, which you'd think, the master commends the dishonest steward for being so crafty, for being so clever. What does this point to, right? The Presbyterians, the Scottish Presbyterians, have a good line on this in their translation of the Lord's Prayer. It's "Forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are indebted to us." It is the dishonest steward, the dishonest manager is he's offering grace. Now, he's offering grace on behalf of someone else, right? But he is offering grace to people. What's the church's job, right? Now, that doesn't mean that we ignore debt. It doesn't mean that we ignore sin. We can't, or we're not being honest. That's like a doctor who sees that a patient has cancer and doesn't say anything about it. I mean, that's not cool. It's like a car mechanic who notices that your brakes are failing but says nothing, because that would be uncomfortable for you to hear. Oh, my brakes are failing. That makes me unhappy. Oh, I don't want to make you unhappy, so I won't tell you that your brakes are failing, right? The church that does not talk about sin is letting people drive with bad brakes and not treating a disease, right? But on the other hand, the only reason we talk about sin is because grace is on offer, because there is forgiveness. And this parable is a sticky one, because I mean the steward is being dishonest. It doesn't say that he isn't still fired. He commends him, but maybe he's still fired, right? But he finishes up, but I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. More to chew on there than to just neatly button up, isn't there? And then he's taking a line that is attached to another parable in other places, but whoever is faithful in very little is faithful also in much. Okay, and so those who are given a little and are responsible with it will be responsible if given more, right? They'll be given more. And now it's not in this, it's not the telling of that parable here, so that's just that line. And also, no slave can serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and wealth. It's the reality is that we're going to worship something, and something we worship will claim dominance. If you worship two things. One of them is they're going to strive against each other, and one of them is going to get the upper hand. So what do we want to worship? The Pharisees object to this. And boy, does Jesus drop the hammer on them. He drops the hammer on them. And then there's this line about divorce and remarriage. This is clearly Luke gathering together all sorts of sayings and little stories. They don't necessarily connect. You can find a through line if you really work at it, but I think it is simply a collection of things Jesus said, and Luke is just chucking them in there because he wants to get down a sense of who Jesus was. He wants to communicate to us what he knows of Jesus, and he doesn't necessarily have the story around it that make all these things make sense. So they're just here. If you've ever seen the TV show, it's an internet TV show, The Chosen. That show takes all of these things and then builds the story around them to see how they could fit together, what might be behind Jesus using shepherds as an example, for instance. So in the show, he's speaking to some people, some of whom are shepherds, right? He also then tells the story of Lazarus. This is not the Lazarus who shows up in John, whom he raises. This is the Lazarus that is just in story form. The poor man at the gate covered with sores, but when he dies, he goes to heaven. And the rich man who ignored him dies and goes to hell, and he's crying out for help. And the answer rather coldly comes back. You had Abraham and the prophets. You didn't listen to them. Why would you listen? And he says, well, send someone to my brothers and sisters, from the dead. And then the very pointed line, if they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead. A prescient and telling finish to the chapter. Again, I think this is a collection of things that Luke has brought together simply in the middle bit between the preparation for the coming and the birth narratives and all that, and then the turn to Jerusalem and the building tension leading to his eventual crucifixion, where Jesus is teaching and Luke is just giving us things that he has said and done without a particular narrative structure around most of it. There's a thin narrative structure, and then the Pharisees asked this and he said back, and then someone but I think it is largely things that he knew, sayings that Jesus had delivered, things that Jesus had said that he's recalling and putting in to the gospel to again point to what? Life, resurrection. Okay. How does if you didn't listen to Moses and the prophets, why would you listen to the dead man risen? How does that point to life? It is a caution, right? It is a caution. He is, first of all, foreshadowing his own death and resurrection, which is life, triumphing over death. But he is also, I believe, it's a cautionary foreshadowing, right? Pay attention. Listen to Moses and the prophets, and pay attention for the one who will rise. Okay. Everything here is, again, trending toward life, trending toward wholeness, trending toward grace, resurrection. So there is the 16th day. Sit down, do your reading, do your listening if you're on audiobook, and I will see you for the 17th day. The 17th day will also include a special something you'll see tomorrow. Bye.